Valentine's Day is supposed to be a day to celebrate the relationship of the one that you're in love with. But some have used that day to show nothing but pure evil. Here are 6 vicious Valentine's Day murders. In Macomb County, Michigan, a seemingly normal family man named Stephen Grant had a nice home, lovely wife, and 2 kids. But the horrific crime Stephen committed was anything but normal. On Valentine's Day 2007, Stephen called the local sheriff's office to report his wife missing. He says his wife, 34-year-old Tara Grant, was seen leaving the house in a dark-colored car that he didn't recognize after the two had gotten into an argument. The reason Stephen waited so long to report her missing is because Tara worked 5 days a week in Puerto Rico and would commute back home on the weekends. Stephen had tried calling Tara and left messages voicing his concern.
Hi, this is the back on the Tara Grant. Please leave a message and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
It's after 2 right now. Quarter after 2. I just want to know what's going on. I think you owe me and your kids at least you owe us a little bit of explanation. Call me. Just call and let me know what the hell's going on. Bye.
But days after not hearing from her, he knew something was wrong. He even reached out to the local news, pleading with the public to help find Tara.
Call anybody, call the police, call me, call someone. If you see her, tell me, please.
But those were all fake tears. Stephen was the only one that knew that Tara was already dead. Stephen was detectives' top suspect. And when a woman was going for a jog in Stony Creek Metro Park, only walking distance from Stephen's home, she found a Ziploc bag with bloody gloves and metal shavings inside. This prompted investigators to perform a search warrant on Stephen's home on March 2nd. Stephen knew the gig was up at this point. Before police discovered any evidence, and Stephen not being under arrest yet, Stephen said he was going out for a walk while the home was being combed through top to bottom. And in the garage, in a storage bin, wrapped in a garbage bag, police found the hacked up torso of Tara Grant. Pushing past the gruesome discovery you think only happens in movies, police go to arrest Stephen for the murder of his wife. But Stephen cannot be found. They let him slip away, and the search was on for a savage killer. Stephen borrowed a friend's truck from down the street. Once he made a call from his cell phone, they discovered his location. Police found Stephen 225 miles away in Wilderness State Park in northern Michigan. He was out in the snow, nearly frozen to death. Stephen was airlifted to Northern Michigan Hospital for hypothermia. After a couple of days and reaching stable condition, Stephen confessed to everything. Stephen says him and Tara were arguing about her crazy work schedule. The dispute quickly escalated. Tara slaps Stephen across the face. Stephen retaliates and hits her back.
She fell, and she banged back her head on the floor, and then she said something like, "That's it. I'm gonna take kids, you're gonna be homeless, you're a piece of..."
Overwhelmed with anger, Stephen does the unthinkable.
I choked around her neck. She finally grabbed my hand at one point, but it was too late. I couldn't stop it. I knew I was going to prison.
Stephen then ties a belt around Tara's neck and drags her downstairs into his SUV, where the next morning he would take Tara's lifeless body to his father's metal shop to commit another heinous act in hopes to cover up his crime by using tools at the shop to dismember her body.
I cut Tara's hands off, and I cut to the next joint, and the next joint, and same with her legs. And at some point I threw up, and I threw up again.
Stephen then took pieces of Tara and hid them throughout Stony Creek Metro Park, but Tara's torso was too big to hide, which is why it was left in Stephen's garage. Police spent days searching the park looking for pieces of Tara. Prosecutors believe Stephen was motivated by his desire to be with their family live-in nanny from Germany, 19-year-old Verena, but no concrete evidence was found. On December 21, 2007, Stephen Grant was found guilty of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 50 years. The entire Grant family was torn apart, including Stephen's father, William Grant. On June 13, 2008, he committed suicide, overtaken by immense grief and pain that someone that he raised could commit such an atrocity. Since Tara's death, there has been an annual Tara Grant Memorial 5K walk to raise awareness for domestic abuse and help those that are in need. The most well-known case on this list involves Oscar Pistorius. He was born with a congenital defect, and before his first birthday, doctors were forced to amputate both his feet. Fitted with prosthetics, he was fortunate to live a normal life, actually even better than normal. Fitted with these blade-style limbs, he was able to compete at the highest level on the track. The peak of his fame was in 2012, where he qualified to compete in the London Olympic Games for his home country of South Africa. It wasn't so much the time that he could run that brought him all the attention, but a topic of controversy. People debated if it gave him an unfair advantage or not. Pistorius didn't medal, but he was offered a number of endorsements such as Nike for all his notoriety. But his beloved underdog story took a turn for the worst. On Valentine's Day 2013, Pistorius and his model girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, went to bed at 10 p.m. Around midnight, Pistorius heard what he believed to be an intruder from downstairs. He went to investigate with his pistol in hand. He saw that the bathroom door was closed and could hear noises coming from inside. Pistorius' next move was the worst decision of his life. He fired 4 shots into the bathroom door, not knowing what was on the other side. He then put on his prosthetics and broke down the locked door. And when he did, he discovered that he had shot and killed his own girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. The story made headlines across the world. The once beloved athlete now facing murder charges. Pistorius says he didn't hear Riva get out of bed to use the restroom, nor did he notice she was no longer in the bedroom. Whether you believe his story or not, firing a gun through a door, not knowing what's on the other side, was reckless behavior. But that's what the courts were going to decide. In October of 2014, Oscar Pistorius was found guilty of culpable homicide and reckless endangerment with a firearm, and was sentenced to 12 years in prison and will be eligible parole in 2023. To this day, Pistorius believed that it was an intruder inside his home, and he never meant to kill Riva. Whether that is true or not, his deed didn't go without punishment. Unfortunately, we will never hear Riva's side of the story. 2010, 36-year-old Stacy Scheck was a mother of 3 and on her 5th husband, Richard Scheck. It was Valentine's Day, and the two had a romantic tradition of exchanging Valentine's cards at a nearby Belton Bridge park. Richard arrived at the park first, but when Stacy showed up, Richard was on the ground next to his truck, dead, with a gunshot to the head. Detectives didn't have much to go on, except for the set of tire prints that were at the scene. The orange set is that of Richard's, and the blue set is the possible suspects. The entire thing seemed very unusual. Richard still had all his money and wallet on him. If robbery wasn't the motive, then what was? A deep look into Stacy answered that question. Stacy had a great job at DeKalb Medical Center in Georgia, and some company emails revealed the trail of payments to a subordinate of Stacy's named Lenitra Ross, and those payments were under the disguise of house repairs. But really, the money was to give to her boyfriend, Reginald Coleman, who agreed to kill Richard Scheck for roughly $10,000. And what was Lenitra's reward, you ask? Free rent from Stacy. Lenitra rented one of the homes that Stacy owned. Plus, Stacy promised to give the couple her parents' Chevy Impala, the same car that Reginald used to commit the murder. Detectives examined the tires on the car and found a perfect match for the ones at the crime scene. Once confronted with all the evidence, Stacy confessed to it all, along with the help of Lenitra and Reginald.
It was supposed to be a robbery. That's what he had said. It was supposed to be 1 shot to the head. I said, I don't want him to suffer. I don't want him to see anything.
Police also looked into Stacy's boyfriend Juan that she was hiding from Richard, but excluded him from participating. So why would Stacy do all this? She had $500,000 reasons through a recent life insurance policy that she purchased. She said she didn't want to go through another divorce. Richard Scheck was just another husband to Stacy. In the end, justice was served, and all three received life in prison. 25-year-old Tiana Notice was a very bright, gregarious girl. She had a great job and was pursuing a master's in communications at the University of Hartford. Everything was going great in her life. That was until she met James Carter. They started dating, and he seemed to be a good fit for her at first. But in the middle of their relationship, James was arrested and sentenced to 5 months in jail for domestic abuse against a former girlfriend of his. This showed Tiana that James wasn't exactly who he said he was. He had a history of anger and violence. So Tiana filed a restraining order on him. In return, James filed a restraining order on Tiana. She really didn't care about that, as long as James would stay out of her life. But he didn't. James became obsessed with Tiana. He called and texted her constantly, even following her around town running errands. This obviously violated the restraining order. But when Tiana went to local police to show them that James was still harassing her, they didn't seem to care. Time and time again, nothing was done. Tiana's mother claimed that she went to the police department 33 times in a 6-week span in hopes to get James arrested, but to no avail. On Valentine's Day 2009, Tiana left her apartment and saw a note that was left on her front door that read, "Tiana, forgive me. I never cheated on you. If I'm lying, may God take my life. Forgive me for everything else that I've done." Tiana then did what she always did and took this note to the police station, knowing it was from James. Again, police didn't arrest him, but rather they called James and told him not to do stuff like this because the next time he will be arrested. This infuriated James. So later that day, James waited for Tiana to come home, and when she did, he followed her to the front door of her apartment and stabbed her over and over again. James quickly fled the scene, and Tiana called police on her cell phone after being stabbed with a neighbor by her side.
I'm bleeding to death.
Where are you? Juan?
I'm bleeding to death.
Stay on the phone with me.
My ex-boyfriend just stabbed me to death.
Who's there with you? Who's there with you?
You're not gonna die. You're not gonna die.
Unfortunately, her neighbor was wrong. Tiana bled out right there. James was swiftly apprehended and confessed to what he did and received 60 years in prison. Hopefully that's for the rest of his life. That 911 tape is hard to listen to. Tiana's family mourned her death, but also pointed out that it should never have happened. James constantly violated his restraining order. Tiana showed the police evidence of him doing so, but nothing was ever done. James should have been in jail and never had a chance to kill Tiana. The Plainville and Waterbury police departments were found to be grossly negligent and guilty in a wrongful death suit and ordered to pay $10 million to Tiana's family. From this money, the Tiana Angelique Notice Foundation was formed to help strengthen laws against domestic violence and stalking. Tiana took all the proper steps to have the system work in her favor, but it failed her. Valentine's Day 2013, Peoria, Illinois. A 41-year-old missionary man named Nathan Luthold came home and noticed that there was a break-in, broken windows, and the house completely ransacked. But the most horrific part, his wife on the floor, lifeless in a pool of blood. She was shot in the back of the head. At first, it appeared to be a robbery gone wrong. Maybe the home was being robbed and Denise came home in the middle of it, spooked the burglars, and paid the ultimate price. But as detectives looked closer at the crime scene, it didn't appear to be natural. They suspected the robbery part to be staged. That's when investigators zoned in on the husband, Nathan. Nathan and Denise had 2 kids together and also sponsored a 21-year-old foreign exchange student from Lithuania named Ina. There were whispers of Nathan having a romantic affair with Ina, buying her clothes and paying for spa treatments. This seemed to be things only one would pay for if you're in a relationship. These suspicions only grew stronger as detectives read notes written by Denise suspecting Nathan of infidelity. The most alarming is when addressing it to Nathan, she wrote, "I know you want me dead." Police obtained a subpoena for Nathan's phone and computer. Not only did they find flirty messages between Nathan and Ina, but on Nathan's Google search, they found the searches for best way to kill someone, how to muzzle a gunshot, and lethal injection. That may not be a smoking gun, but possibly the brightest red flag possible. Also, the .40 caliber shell casing that was found next to Denise was the same caliber of weapon that Nathan owned, but reported missing a couple weeks prior to the murder. A very convenient thing to happen so detectives can't compare ballistics. With enough circumstantial evidence to arrest Nathan, they did, and charged him with first-degree murder. A jury of his peers heard the arguments and deliberated, and ultimately came back with a guilty verdict. Nathan was sentenced to 80 years in prison. You might think Ina could have been a part of the plot as well, but charges were never filed, and it was just Nathan that will be rotting away for the rest of his life. 1993, San Bernardino County. A 29-year-old Ignacia Manriquez had 3 kids with Juan Manuel Navarro. The couple's relationship had soured, and Ignacia had filed for a restraining order against Juan. Juan became very angry and bitter towards the whole situation, and on Valentines of that year, Juan Navarro did the unimaginable. Ignacia was taking her 4-year-old little Juan to the Loma Linda University Medical Center due to experiencing flu-like symptoms. Once arriving in the parking lot, Juan Navarro had followed her and surprised Ignacia with a gun in his hand. A witness named Bradford Montgomery describes what happened next.
Clearly, as he wrestled her out of that truck and just basically dragged her down, and without looking around or anything, just right under and fired, and grabbed her by the back of the neck as he pulled her out and fired.
Juan Navarro then takes little Juan with him and drives away. Mr. Montgomery follows the vehicle, but loses track of him, but not before he gets a description of the car and a partial license plate to give to police once he returns back to the crime scene. Police were on the search for Juan Navarro and his son. 19 days after the murder, little Juan was returned to his grandma's house, but Juan Navarro fled again. Little Juan described what happened that day by saying that Daddy shot Mommy and there was ketchup everywhere. It was later discovered that Juan Navarro was hiding out at a ranch house in the city of Coachella, where the boy described there was nothing but big parties happening. For years, local police and FBI were on the manhunt for Mr. Navarro. Ignacia's father would often go to Mexico with a photo of Mr. Navarro, asking around if anyone has seen him. Not until 2009, 16 years after the murder, Juan Navarro was captured by the Mexican authorities just outside of Mexico City and extradited back to the US, where Mr. Navarro could finally face the consequences of what he's done, and Ignacia's family was able to speak directly to him and describe the pain and anger they felt. Juan Manuel Navarro was sentenced to 25 years to life and will most likely die in prison, and maybe Ignacia can finally rest in peace.